Hello, I'm Nivedita Mukherjee. Welcome to Budget with Business Standard. Let's take a quick look at the stories we have for you. With economic recovery still fragile in some sectors and uncertainty around the pandemic continuing, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is unlikely to lean on spending firepower when she presents the union budget. Will she go for a massive correction in fiscal deficit targets for FY23? Let's take stock of the situation.
Boosting demand, consumption, income levels and job creation remains the top priority for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his team of budget makers in the PMO and North Bloc. And public investment in infrastructure projects with a high multiplier effect will be the main plank to stage this recovery. Along with increased capital expenditure, the budget may also announce substantial outlays for the health sector, vaccine coverage, welfare and rural schemes, and fertilizers and food subsidies. This means that strong revenue collections notwithstanding, the fiscal deficit target for the coming year is likely to be in the range of 6.5 to 6.8% of nominal GDP. The target for fiscal deficit or budget deficit, that is the difference between a sovereign's expenditure in excess of its revenue, is 6.8% for the current year. In 2020-21, it was raised from 3.5% estimated in the budget to 9.4% in the revised estimates. This year, while tax revenue collections have been encouraging, expenditure commitments have also shot up. In the recently concluded winter session, the Finance Minister sought Parliament's approval to spend an additional 3 trillion rupees. There are also serious doubts whether the divestment target of 1.75 trillion rupees will be met. So in absolute terms, fiscal deficit this year is likely to be much higher than the budgeted 15.07 trillion rupees. However, nominal GDP projections for FY22 have now been upgraded to 232.15 trillion rupees from 222.9 trillion rupees. Of 232.15 trillion rupees, 6.8% would come to 15.8 trillion rupees. That gives Sitharaman more than 70,000 crore rupees of extra fiscal headroom without breaching the target. This is a trend we could see next year as well, especially if wholesale inflation remains close to double digits. For long, the medium-term fiscal deficit target for the centre, as mandated by the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, has been 3%. Since the pandemic, that target seems to be all but dead. This means the policy makers will be under no pressure to bring the deficit down to 3% from 6.8% in any hurry. The Niti Aayog and a number of independent economists are said to have advised the finance minister that she should not rush to lower the fiscal deficit target in the next financial year, as stepping up capital expenditure will help in economic recovery, create jobs, and boost demand.
The wider denominator does give a little bit of wiggle room, right? And the benefits of faster nominal growth is very visible in the fact that our tax collections have been quite robust and are definitely tracking above the numbers, that were penciled in the budget estimates back in February 2021. So I think the reason why, most people are talking about having conservative fiscal targets is basically because if you look at the details of how the economy has recovered, the recovery has largely been led by, the public sector spending. There's been, a gamut of spending coming from consumer side as well, but it's largely, I would say, skewed towards the urban middle class, the higher income stratas. And so it's not a complete recovery, right? So you need to have greater fiscal spending in order to, basically keep providing support as the country sort of comes out, of the pandemic and sort of, recovers its economic mojo. Now, in terms of specific numbers, I think, depending on whether we meet the target in the current fiscal of 6.8% or not, even if it's a little bit higher, I think a little bit of consolidation is warranted.
The coronavirus pandemic has not only eaten into the government's spending power, but has also hurt most sectors of the economy, particularly the touch services such as hospitality, tourism, and leisure. These have been the worst affected by COVID restrictions. The upcoming union budget needs to provide support for these sectors, says CII President and Tata Steel CEO TV Narendran in an interview to Aroop Roy Choudhury. Let's listen to what all he expects from the budget.
Sir, I would like to start off by talking about the economic situation today. There has been a strong recovery, especially in the October to December quarter. And now we have the beginnings of a third wave because of the Omicron variant. So, sir, what is your outlook going ahead? I mean, first of all, how do you view this recovery which is happening? And how difficult do you think the next few months are going to be with this third wave?
Yeah. So, Arup, we had the National Council of CII in early December. And when we spoke to all the CEOs who attend, the general sentiment was positive because many sectors had already reached pre-pandemic levels of demand. Profitability was improving for most companies. Many of them who are traditional exporters were exporting more than they normally do. And balance sheets were getting repaired. And so the sense we got was the private sector investment cycle is starting to come back. So what you described just now is important. Yes, there is a wave 3 happening, and how we deal with it is very important to ensure that the recovery continues, because there has been a huge impact on livelihoods over the last couple of years, which has demonstrated or manifested itself in the fact that consumption has not picked up as much as one would have expected, right? So it's important for us to find that balance between lives and livelihoods, make sure that we protect lives while at the same time ensure that the economic recovery is back on track. So I think both industry and government needs to work together in a coordinated fashion. And even in government, the center and the states need to work together so that we don't have unnecessary disruptions.
On 1st of February, the Honorable Finance Minister will present probably one of our most crucial budgets. So as per you, what are the 2 to 3 things that the Finance Minister and all the bureaucrats should be keeping at the top of their mind while preparing this?
So one is, we've said we should continue to spend on infrastructure, and the government focus on investment should continue, because while there is a recovery, it needs to be sustained. Okay. And I think the fiscal deficit is as per plan. The revenue generation and the tax collections are better than planned. So I think overall, there is fiscal space for us to continue the focus on investments, and more specifically in infrastructure, because infrastructure is a driver of demand, and infrastructure is also a driver of competitiveness. We need to certainly continue to improve the ease of doing business and cost of doing business, because this is ongoing. A lot of work has been done on ease of doing business. We need to ensure that policy stability is there, both at the central and state level. The third part is on the cost of doing business. CII, we've recommended to the government that we should develop a cost of doing business index, which will help us benchmark states with each other, help them compete with each other, help us benchmark India with other countries. Then we also feel that there needs to be a policy roadmap which is developed and an infrastructure roadmap which is developed to help us transition to a greener future. Another 2 points I want to make. We've also said that in the context of ease of doing business, we should encourage self-certification as the way forward, as a default way of working. And the last point is, since this is going to be a decade of technology, how do we further nurture the startup ecosystem? They create jobs, they bring in capital. You have more and more job creators rather than job seekers once you have a very strong startup ecosystem.
Essentially, if I ask you what are the sectors she should focus on, what would your answer be? Would it be renewable, infra, and the such services sectors? Would that be?
Absolutely. I think services will need support because they've been hit the worst. Many parts of services, some parts of services like the IT sector has done well, but the hospitality sector, etc., will need that support, and hospitality and travel related sectors. And infrastructure construction will need the support. I think the PLI scheme should continue. That will help manufacturing.
What more can the budget do? What more can the finance minister do for employment creation, as per you?
Yeah. So one is, certainly continue the focus on manufacturing, because manufacturing not only creates job, but oftentimes the quality of jobs are also quite good. So to me, there is a need to focus on manufacturing. The PLI schemes are a good initiative in that effort. At a more specific level, even within manufacturing, how can we look at a more focus on employment intensive manufacturing? Other thing to look at is, services sector, like we talked about hospitality, but tourism as a whole, and I think the government has talked about that. I know just now travel from overseas may be limited, but even as we've seen in the last few months, there is a lot of potential to grow domestic tourism.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you.
While the upcoming budget is going to be presented amid several pressures and financial constraints, there seems to be one bright spot in indirect taxes. Even if the budget has nothing to do with rate and policy changes in GST and provides only directional clarity, GST has been the biggest source of revenue for the government among indirect taxes. Collections from GST have been much higher than what had been estimated in the previous budget. The same is true of customs tariffs and excise duty mop-ups too. Let's look at some data to understand the relevance of indirect taxes in the government's fiscal maths.
The budget for 2021-22 had estimated that receipts from indirect taxes would grow 2.5% over a year earlier. The actual collections, however, indicate that the government might have been too conservative in estimating the numbers, perhaps because of uncertainty over its administrative measures and economic recovery in general. The government's indirect tax collections have increased almost 39% in the first 8 months of the current financial year. By November, almost 72% of the budget estimates for indirect tax mop-up had been realized, against 42% in the same period a year earlier. However, a comparison with the previous financial year may not be right due to COVID-induced lockdowns. During pre-COVID period of April-November FY20, 45.5% of the budget estimates had been realized. However, indirect tax growth in the first 8 months of FY22 has not been led so much by excise duties as by customs and GST. Last year, excise duties rose almost 62%, whereas customs tariffs grew 24%. On the other hand, GST contracted 8.3%. It should be noted that GST in the budget comprises mainly central GST and compensation cess. In the first 8 months of the current financial year, GST has risen 36%, whereas the budget had estimated it to grow almost 15% in the entire year. In fact, GST at 4.52 trillion rupees constituted more than half the total indirect tax kitty of 8.2 trillion rupees till November FY22. Customs doubled to 1.25 trillion rupees as the government raised tariffs on a number of finished goods to promote the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, and the economy recovered partly. The budget had expected it to rise by less than 1% during the current financial year. Excise also surprised when it rose 23% to 2.42 trillion rupees till November of FY22, compared with the budget estimate of 1.41% decline. The cut in excise duty on petrol by 5 rupees a litre and diesel by 10 rupees a litre from November 4 did not have much impact in the month, but it would have some dampening impact from December onwards, since global rate for the Indian basket of oil has decreased to $73.30 a barrel from $80.64 a barrel in November, and Omicron has forced the government to go for select lockdowns since the end of December.
If we look back, some of the most remarkable budgets have come against the backdrop of crisis, like the one facing the country today. Let's dive into history and look at some of India's landmark budgets.
Since its independence in 1947, India has seen some path-breaking budgets that have changed the course for its economy in the following years. The first on the list, of course, is the first budget after India became a republic. Presented by John Mathai in February 1950, it laid down the roadmap for creation of the Planning Commission. Though the body had already been announced by the President Rajendra Prasad and created later through an executive order, the budget gave the composition of the commission. It was to be chaired by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Labour Minister Gulzari Lal Nanda was to be the deputy chairman. There were to be 4 members, and the names of 3 were announced. The budget talked about drawing a new plan in place of the earlier one, formulated after the Second World War, in the wake of the partition of India and integration of the former princely states into the country. And this job was given to the Planning Commission. Though his budget paved the way for setting up of the Planning Commission, Mathai himself resigned after a few weeks in protest against vesting of huge powers with this proposed body. The next on the list is the 1957-58 budget presented by T.T. Krishnamachari in May 1957. It put curbs on imports through an import licensing system, took back budgetary allocation for non-core projects, and set up an export risk insurance corporation to protect exporters against payment risks. The budget raised the income tax rates, introduced the wealth tax, a tax on expenditure, and a tax on railway passenger fee. The 1973-74 budget presented by Y.B. Chavan is now termed the Black Budget because it showed a high budget deficit of 550 crore rupees. It allocated 56 crore for nationalization of general insurance companies, Indian Copper Corp and coal mines. The aim was to allow uninterrupted supply of coal to meet the growing demand by power, cement and steel industries. In the budget for 1986-87, much before states introduced state VAT and GST came into being, Finance Minister V.P. Singh introduced Mod VAT, or Modified Value Added Tax. This allowed a set of duties paid off on inputs against the duties payable on final goods. A year later, after Singh was moved to the Defence Ministry, the 1987-88 budget presented by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, who held additional charge of the Finance Ministry, introduced Minimum Alternate Tax, or the MAT. The 1991-92 budget is known for path-breaking policies by then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh. It ushered India into the road of economic liberalization and reforms by shunning the past policies of Inspector Raj and import substitution. Though much of the reforms happened outside the budget, this landmark budget did prune the peak customs duty from 220% to 120%. Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's 1997-98 budget is called the Dream Budget. It lowered the personal income tax rates to 10%, 20% and 30% from 15%, 30% and 40%. It launched the Voluntary Disclosure of Income Scheme, an amnesty scheme to bring out black money. The ad hoc treasury bills used for financing the budget deficit were phased out. The budget also allowed companies to adjust MAT paid in earlier years against tax liability in subsequent years. And more recently, the 2017-18 budget saw Finance Minister Arun Jaitley setting the stage for GST. Though he did not mention the exact date of GST rollout, he did not make any changes in the excise duty and the services tax because, as he said in his budget speech, the same are to be replaced by GST soon.
Do we have another historic budget coming in the midst of a crisis? Let's wait for the 1st of February to know. That's all we have for you in this episode of Budget with BS. See you on Tuesday with more insights.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.